Welcome back to Shelve Your Boots. I'm Katie, the face behind Shelve Your Boots, and this week we have Sarah from the Ripple Pond, who I reached out to after seeing quite a few posts from you guys. So if you could give a little intro to yourself, Sarah, and how you came about Ripple Pond, and then we'll get into all the amazing stuff that you guys do for our veterans out there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate the invite. My name's Sarah. I get involved in projects and stuff to do with brand or anything really that's kind of project facing with the Ripple Pond. So that's kind of my world. But before I was staff at the Ripple Pond, I was a member of the Ripple Pond as a user, and so is that a little bit of the story you want me to tell? Yeah. Okay. So my background is not military. I don't come from like a serving families. My family isn't that at all. But I met my husband Chris as he was. I think he was just about to go on a tour, but he had already put his notice in to say that he was going to come out. So we knew like military life was not going to be our jam. So that was kind of how we came along. We kind of dated and we got married. About, I don't know, 4 months, I think, after he had left the military. And so we were happily married. My husband's a very chilled, calm man. And then all of a sudden, started to not be quite so chilled.
Yeah.
And we started to have these like moments of actually, he's not okay. And he was really lucky, like in terms of he had left the military, and I don't think there was much gap between going into employment. He was really lucky in that his transition and how it had worked for him. But suddenly things weren't quite going so well. Roll forward a little bit, then we had some small children, and things just like, it felt like the wheels were coming off, which ultimately ended us in a place where I said, you either get some help or we're done.
Yeah.
Because we were having moments of just real anger, frustration, and he was as confused as we were. It was just, it came out of nowhere. We didn't know what was going on. Meanwhile, I don't know if this may be too much to tell, but this is our story. It is what it is. I was pregnant with our third child, who really sadly we lost late in pregnancy, and it was a really traumatic, horrible moment. And so we had our third daughter's funeral. As we came out of that funeral, and we were like, our lives had felt like they were unraveling before us anyway, and we had this funeral, we were just in pieces, and that was the point that we had the phone call from the psychologist to confirm that my husband was being diagnosed with PTSD.
Yeah.
And I think in my very adult state of mind that I was in, I was like, well, great, like if you can name it, you can cure it, right?
Yeah.
That was very much my frame of reference, was, okay, things are going to get better then. And that wasn't really the story we found ourselves on. So, and I know for some people that can be their journey. For us, it's not. We very much he started getting some treatment, and it was like Pandora's box, which had been so trying to jam closed, and on top of it was like we couldn't get a lid on it. We couldn't tell when things were going to go wrong. We couldn't figure out when was safe, when was not safe. Our life became around like, how do we just kind of create like safe spaces that work? And in the midst of this I was so confused. I was in the middle of grief. We had 2 small children as well, so we were trying to do all of those, and in the middle of all of that, I was just completely lost. That was the point I reached out to the Ripple Pond, and I just kind of phoned them, and because I didn't have any frame of reference for any of this stuff, nothing at all. So I just felt like, what's going on? Like, this loving, chilled, calm husband has gone, and I don't even recognise the person that I'm married to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was, really reassuring just to phone the Ripple Pond and have a conversation where someone understood, because none of my circle of friends understood. No one got what was going on.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, one question is, oh, okay, and how long does it take to get better?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. So it was amazing just to phone them and just to have someone that understood. And that's been our journey, really. I mean, so he was diagnosed with PTSD 8 years after leaving the military, which I think is quite a common length of time. And then that's really been our journey for the next 10 years sort of post that. You know, we've gone through various different treatments, various different pathways, some helpful, some not so helpful, if I'm brutally honest with you. And I think the thing we've learned is that treatments come and go and family stays. And so, like, we better get ourselves equipped to know what we're doing, and that takes me figuring out what's going on. That takes me getting a bit of understanding, and that also takes me kind of, and us as a family unit, navigating that together. And so now my kids are a bit older, they're all well versed in, okay, these things help us as a family, these things don't help us as a family, and then how we're going to navigate that together. So we've found some little tips and tricks along the way, but it's very much just a journey, and we'll just see how it goes.
And that's the thing, I think, and your story isn't an uncommon story, and even, you know, meeting someone at that point in their career, so they've, you know, probably had quite a long career before, but you're meeting them as they're looking to sort of leave, and that whole stressful journey, which, you know, if you've never experienced it or been around people that have experienced it, that's a whole new thing on itself. And then to couple that with, you know, a young family, to couple that with, you know, the mental health side and trying to find a diagnosis and try and figure out what's going on. I mean, for him in that kind of world, because I think it's one of those things I've found, especially when people leave with things like PTSD, is like you say, you think you're fine when you go, and you think you're fine, and then you think you're fine, and then it swipes you sideways from absolutely out of nowhere and takes you by surprise. And I find a lot of people can't quite fathom what's going on, but also don't necessarily tie it back to the military because they've left. So there's that kind of
Yes.
like detachment of, well, it can't be that. What is going on? And then it takes so long to then get that diagnosis and to realise, well, actually now I've got to look back 8 years ago and sort of delve into that kind of mentality and that box of tricks that I thought I'd packed away quite nicely somewhere in the back of my
Yeah.
brain.
Packed it into a little box and shelved it nicely as that happened then.
Yeah, and now I've got to unbox that in an environment that's completely different and deal with it with a family that wasn't there, didn't see it, didn't, you know, I'm not with people I worked with, and it's you know, it's a very, I think, very strange situation to find yourself in, as the person being and dealing with it, but the family around as well, because like I say, you weren't there and experienced the previous tours or the entire, you know, sort of life of that military thing. It was very much towards the end. So two worlds just being thrown together and told, figure it out. That might work. That might work. This probably won't, but we'll give it a try.
Not even figure it out, because no one tells you that. The only conversation happens, you know, with my husband, and his brain is so adult and so struggling to comprehend and process that a clinician might very well have said this would be a great conversation to have with your family, but unless they've had that conversation directly with the family, the chance of that conversation taking place is so minimal.
Yeah.
Because they're traumatized, they're struggling, but more than that, there's this whole piece of self-loathing, you know, like if I was a real, you know, strong person, I would be able to deal with this fine, I should be, but I've got to get help. That is a whole journey in and of itself, let alone that my struggle is now impacting a family and actually the family need help. That's a whole extra can of worms that needs opening, and that takes time. And actually in the middle of it, you've got a family on the other side that are going, what is going on? Like, this is not the person I married, this is not the life we envisaged together. And you know, so yeah, are they being told to have that conversation? A, I'm not sure they are being told to have that conversation and told to figure it out. And B, if they are, I'm not sure that message is really getting through to the families that are just living on the other side of it, that have no frame of
Yeah.
reference. And I think it's quite a interesting sort of journey from everyone's perspective. You know, I can talk as a family member that sits there, but you know, from my husband's perspective, he's in his whole. It's so all-consuming what's going on in his brain,
Yeah.
and so you know, it's just massive, isn't it, to try and unpick.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, and it's really difficult because, like you say, the individual is struggling and struggling to articulate what's even happening to them, and then trying to articulate that to someone else who's not inside their brain is just a whole nother kettle of fish. And there's an element of it as well, I think, that if you say it out loud, it's happening. So the moment I start to discuss it with someone, and someone in my family and in a relationship, well, that's then reality for them as well. And there's an element you want
Yeah,
to protect them from that, but that doesn't also help the situation because they're just going to worry, stress, panic because they want to help you. But with that,
yeah.
it's like a chicken and an egg situation. You can't do that without that, but you don't want to do that because you might do that. There's this constant, I think, internal battle that happens. And I've said before, sort of on one of these, I think the reality is when you start to get into sort of that mental health space, there is, like you say, that battle that happens about, I should be okay, I should be able to deal with this. I'm a strong person, I should be able to deal with this. But the reality is, when things start to change like that, what I found with my mental health was I had to learn a whole new person in my brain. I wasn't the person I recognized anymore. And the only way I could ever describe it to someone is like, especially people in the military, is like living in the block and you live next door to someone who you really, really like and you get on really well, and you in each other's rooms, and you know each other so well, and then they leave, and then you get an absolute arsehole living next door that plays music at 3 a.m., is smelly and all the rest of it. But you have to live with them, and you have to figure out a way of living with them that doesn't rile you to the point of insanity because they're just pissing you off. And for me, that was a lot of the processes. I'd lost someone in my head that was like my best friend, and it was replaced by this absolute arsehole that was just sabotaging me at every turn. And I'm sat there going, but you're meant to be my mate. what what is going on? And to even just understand that in myself took a long, long time. But then for like, you say, a lot of guys, they're very, very proud and very like, well, I'm strong, I'm capable, I've done all this stuff, and now this is the thing that I'm stuck at. This is the bit that starts to unravel me. And how do I even stop that without causing mayhem and distress throughout the household? And the reality is, holding it in is the thing that will cause mayhem and distress throughout the household.
Right.
The opposite.
But that's a really slow thing to
Yeah.
unpick, isn't it? Because like even with like my much less journey with anxiety, like you don't always want to say the things that are going on in your head because you don't want to look
Yeah.
stupid. Like you don't want to look like, oh my gosh, get a grip.
Yeah.
So like, but just in that journey with anxiety, knowing the less I say, the louder the brain is and the louder those internal thoughts are. And so actually what I need to do is say, do you know what, this is going on in my head.
Yeah.
I know, I get it. It's not reasonable, it's not okay, but that is what's happening.
Yeah.
But then even more so when some of the things that you've gone through are quite ugly or difficult or make you question your own morals. I think some of the kind of stuff around moral injury is quite, it's really complex to begin to unpick. And it's not like something you just drop into table conversation, is it? It's not like the kind of like you're right around the table
Yeah.
eating and you drop in, oh, my head's a bit messed up with
Yeah.
this. You just can't do that. And I think that's really hard when you are suddenly in Civvy Street
Yeah.
and trying to have those conversations with a wife who loves you dearly but has got no
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. It is. It's really, even if you don't have like another half or anything like that. What I've found, sort of the place I work now, are very sort of open to conversation, and to be honest, it's been a huge learning curve for them in terms of military and mentality. Even like remembrance, it didn't even twig for them that that might be a bit of a thing. Because we've had open conversations about it, about things that have happened and the things that you're exposed to, and what have you. What has resulted from that is the Iran thing kicking off, and work going, how are you feeling about this? Because you're seeing a lot on the news. It's very reminiscent of Iraq, Afghanistan. You're seeing oil fields on fire and this kind of stuff, which has been quite nice to see, that even it's starting to twig that actually this might impact someone's day-to-day life, even just a very probably dumbed down version of what's really happened, but enough to make people aware, this can and does affect people. And you're right.
I think it's beginning to get that language, isn't it, to be able to communicate in that some of the smaller spaces. We came across, a few like clangers really early on. Like he, with his work situation, he went to a remembrance service, which was already a little bit stressful, but he was like, no, it's fine, it's fine. And a cannon fired behind him. I had to go and pick him up. Like he was just in pieces, and they were like, "We're so sorry. We didn't think." And I was like, no, you didn't. What is this?
We had that happen. What we were doing, and it was while I was at an event, and something went off. I don't know if it was like a cannon. I don't think it was a cannon. It was something. It was a very loud bang. And my mate like physically shook and then shouted, "Off! Some of us have been to war, and just like remember, at this point, I think we were in like Aldershot or something. It was a lovely summer's English day, and this thing went off, and and she really brought it back to reality in that of have a think before you start, or at least warn me before start doing these big bangs and things. And I think it's when at home, I think people do forget, because we have had the luxury in the UK to not really be exposed to that sort of thing, not unless it's a once in a lifetime kind of experience. It's always been far enough away for us not to hear it, or and for me it's weird. I live near an airport, and it's weird little things like it was the anniversary of the airport, so the Red Hour flew over. And I'd forgotten. And the noise, I thought instantly, I was like, a plane's going to crash. A plane's going to crash. Yeah. And I was looking, and then I went on my phone, and then there was photos of I was like, oh, there's bloody red arrows, isn't it? But the noise was so extreme, like I've heard things before. It was like, my instant thought was, oh, that's a lovely display. No, it was something horrible is going to happen. And instantly thought, plane crash.
We had similar, but really different. So we went on holiday together as a family down to the beach, and my husband stood on the sand and went, I can't do sand. And it was like, what do you mean you can't do sand? It was just the sand was blowing around, and it just brought back memories. And I was like, okay. It even occurred to us, it was a lovely day out as a family. Hadn't crossed my mind that sand could feel different.
I think the only place I've seen it represented really well, bizarrely, in TV and things like that is The Handmaid's Tale. Okay. So it's a really, I recommend watching it. It's towards the end of the series. Spoiler, it's when she gets out of Gilead and she's in Canada in safety, and she absolutely loses the plot. She goes running around attacking people. She's in a supermarket having flashbacks and all this sort of stuff. And I spoke to my therapist about it, and sort of said to her, I can see a lot of people watching this going, oh my God, what's wrong with her? She's safe. Like, why is she losing the plot now? Surely, she's fine now. And the reality of it, is that trauma, that you start to feel things, and it starts to overwhelm you, and then you do lose it. And when you're in a reality where everyone's quite normal, you start to feel and see things so you act extreme to really normal scenarios. And you go into the supermarket, and there's this, she has flashbacks of certain things, and she walks past certain things and it reminds her and it takes her back. But then when she goes back in, she switches off, she's focused, and it's fine because she knows how to compartmentalize that bit and deal with it. And it's a really interesting sort of portrayal of how you can go from something so traumatic to safety, and yet you're mentally and character wise worse off because now you're allowed to deal with these emotions, but you don't know how to process those emotions because it's too much. There's too much trauma. There's too much badness that's happened.
Yeah.
So you end up just almost like running wild at one point because what do you do with it? You become reckless. You become impulsive. You just don't think straight because you just what do I do? What do I do with it all? So it's a really I do recommend it as from an outside looking in perspective. It is really, really interesting. It's towards the end. If you don't want to watch the lot, it's towards the end. I think it's like the last season, second to last season, where she starts to show these impulses. But I did watch it thinking people are going to watch this go, this is so unrealistic. Like, this is just a bit over dramatic. And I thought, no, this is exactly
what every other PTSD
portrayal.
It's
exactly what
that we see on television that is utterly unrealistic and very frustrating as someone watching.
Yeah, but so you found Ripple Pond.
Yeah,
and called them up. What was their sort of initial response and kind of the fallout of that phone call to them? And
I think it was just finding space for me as well. And I think that was the thing. Like, my husband was getting help and he was getting treatment, but I had so many questions and so many like, well, how does this work in this situation? Or questions about things like around medication. I could see the impact and I was like, does anyone else go through this? And I think being able to access, so a lot of the Ripple Pond exists around peer support, so connecting you with other people in similar situations. So one, just the relief that there were other people out there, because I couldn't explain well to my friends what was going on. And so the reality was I just stopped trying and I stopped trying to communicate, and I just kind of went into survival mode, which I think is a really understandable thing to do. But there was there was too much to try and explain. So finding some people that you could just kind of go, this has just happened, what do I do with that, was just massively helpful. And then just beginning to get access to some of the other things, like the information talks and the events that you could go to, just again all online, but just that you could begin to access that helped you go, okay, I can put a bit of context in this, where you could you can explain ideas that are working for you as a family. One of the things we do, because it's too complicated in a moment as a family unit, to say, are you okay? What's going on? How are you feeling? That conversation is just like way too much. So we go for, give me a number 1 to 10. How are you doing? 0 being terrible, 10 being amazing. Where are you at? Because I just need a number right now.
Yeah.
And just being able to just put a number, grab a number, those kind of tips and tricks. And someone saying, if you do want to go out for a meal, just go when it's quiet, go before the rush. If you're going to try and do that kind of thing, it's not going to work if it's busy. I was like, okay, I needed that. Like, that just helps us find a way to find normal.
Yeah.
That was the reality, was life had gone so far from normal.
Yeah.
Had no idea what to do. And so finding places where I could kind of say, okay, that's normal, or I can make that feel normal by doing XYZ, or that kind of thing was just super helpful.
Yeah, because I suppose with that, like you say, it's just it's almost simple tasks suddenly become overwhelming, too much, and then all of a sudden you're finding yourself, you're cut off from the world at that point, just to protect yourselves from what could happen.
And you want to begin to help your loved one re-engage in the world, because he'd gone through a whole period of time where, basically it was just about recovery. There was nothing else. So we were trying to kind of go on this journey to, how do you re-engage? How do we begin to step towards you feeling a bit more normal? And like I'd say, we learned to laugh about lots of things, because like I'd send him to the shops, could you just pick up like these 3 items? And he would get in the supermarket, panic, and then we'd have like 4 or 5 random items home, and I was just like, okay, I mean, like, that's not gonna make us dinner, but we'll go with it.
Ready?
What do we do? What do I do? I asked you for milk, bread, and this, and I've got like bananas and
Yeah.
um. But kind of just finding like little ways to kind of go, actually, I need to send him with a list, and then I just need to text him that list again when he's at the shops, just because he'll forget that he's got the list in his pocket, and he'll be panicking because he's in a busy environment.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing as well. It manifests in so many different ways that I think as well, before sometimes you get that diagnosis, but and that community to talk to, it manifests in so many different ways that you don't always connect them all together to the same sort of problem, and you can end up sort of pulling them apart and being like, oh, why have you done that like that, and getting irritated with it. But the reality is they're all feeding into the same problem.
Yeah.
That other people through that peer support you can talk to and be like, has your person done this? Because my person's done this, and it's a bit weird. Yes, that's quite normal now for me. That's good to know. That's good, because otherwise,
and like things like when my child is crying, he just seems really unreasonable.
yeah,
Okay, like that child crying is quite triggering as an event for my husband. Okay, I can understand that then.
yeah,
Like I can have sympathy rather than just becoming an angry person that's like, just pull yourself together. Like this 1 2-year-old needs your support.
yeah,
It's stuff like that. It's just being able to find your normal in what is abnormal, and find your ways of coping with that together, and coming up with your strategies of, okay, when they're crying, you're not going to be the best help in that situation, but what you could do in that situation is you could maybe start dinner or hoover for me, because at least if that's happened, like that's a minor example, but at least if I can figure out, actually that's a better thing, then we can navigate together.
yeah,
Whereas, but rather than just, because otherwise you just begin to take on more and more and more
yeah,
in order to protect the person you love. But actually that's not helpful either. Like we've got to find a way to navigate together and journey together.
yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's there to stay. So the more you take on, that's you having that forever, pretty much at that point. And so you've got to find a way to navigate that. Life can still go
You've got to
on.
live with your noisy neighbour, right?
Yeah, you got to live with that 2 a.m. music in the
Right.
morning, the little rave that they're having, and it's like, okay, maybe I just need to get up, brew, come back, do what I need to do to, and it's almost, yeah, it is living with that new neighbour again and learning each other again, learning how
Yeah.
to communicate again because that's changed, learning how to read each other again because that's changed, how to attack daily life because that's changed, and how it manifests in all these different pockets of your life. And yeah, the more you brush it to a side or take on as a partner, it's not solving, because you've still got to live with that neighbour moving forward.
Yeah.
So you've got to find a way through it together.
Yeah.
And that's, like you say, it's the slow path to that realization, but you're going to have to get to that realization to progress past that realization
Yeah.
and actually have the success on the other side of that.
Yeah.
In those worlds. Have you found, as time's gone on, like you say, you was diagnosed 8 years and then 10 years now since that
Yeah.
diagnosis, as you've learnt those little sort of nuances and those indications and those behaviours, have you found life has just sort of almost become that little bit more, you kind of doing things without thinking anymore and reacting with it? It's become more social life rather than an effort to remember and sort of delve into. It's become a little bit
Yeah.
more.
We've found our ways of getting through things. I think in the early stages it was like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
We were just like, didn't know what was going to trigger what, trying to kind of hold on to what we had and that going wrong. And it just was like the moments when he got just super angry and things were really, scary for him, scary for us. I think those moments just came out of the blue and we were like, no. Whereas I think we're better. We're so much better at knowing what to do, what not to do. We plan our life differently. We navigate. We're in a much healthier place. My husband's not having, counselling or help at the moment. Because we've kind of learnt the tools that we need. Learning the tools that you need, though, don't mean that you don't need the tools.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to use the
Got to get
tools.
them out.
Yeah. So like when the news is on and you're hearing stuff that's really just difficult, like it is at the minute for so many people, are finding that the news and what's going on just super difficult right now. Being able to kind of acknowledge it, give space for it. Things like, we know in our household, on evenings where there's been a lot of fireworks, that's gonna impact sleep, that's gonna impact mental health. Those things are still gonna happen. We just know that they're gonna happen, and so we're gonna navigate them together. It might be on some of those nights I sleep in the spare room because the night terrors are just gonna be louder and more movement. So it's just finding the balance, but that doesn't mean it doesn't catch us sometimes. Like, it still catches us sometimes, like, rubbish, I thought we were going to be on top of that and now we missed it. But that happens, and it'll be something, like one of our teenagers, will be listening to some kind of comedy program, and it actually something they say that's funny, that's really not very funny, and they're trying to repeat it, and that creates a whole thing. Or little moments like that are there still.
Yeah, and I think it's an important thing for people to sort of understand as well. Like you say, just because you've learned the tools, you're going to need the tools, because this is an ongoing thing. And I fell into this trap that I thought, well, I've had the therapy, I feel great, I'm cured. And there's no cure. It's just, and I've said before, I think the person that has said it quite well, Sharon Osbourne, of all people, who suffers with depression, anxiety, and people ask her, how are you feeling? And she's like, I'm good for now. Because she's like, it will come again. I know it will come again, but I'm good for now. I'm in a good space now. And I think that's just a really good way of describing mental health, because it is Pandora's box. Once it's open, it's like that crappy Tupperware in your cupboard that you can never get all the corners down at the same time, but you'll just get it down just right, that it'll kind of hold for a bit. And then you'll open the cupboard and it'll fall out. And you're like, oh, how did I get that back on again? Like, how is that working? And those tools become so important for, like you say, the roads that you've gone down before, and it's like, I know what's going to happen here. I know that that's a trigger. I know that date's a trigger, or that particular event is a trigger. But at the same time, there are going to be things that do surprise you, that you have to sit there and go, why did that trigger me? And you kind of have to unpick that even years after. Like you say, sand of all things. You go to the beach in Bournemouth, and then it's like, right, okay, so we don't do sand. That's fine. Good to know.
Or like, it's not that we don't do sand, but we know that if we do sand, like, we're going to have a few things up our sleeve to kind of.
Yeah.
That might be like that. Me and the kids go down on the beach, and actually, we find somewhere where there's like a nice boardwalk to walk along, and actually that works better.
Yeah.
So like, we find our way through it, but that's where we are today. Like, I think like 5-6 years ago it would be like, we don't do sand. But today I think where we're at is like, okay, well that's going to present a few challenges, but we're going to navigate them, together as a family. And so I think it's different. I do remember probably like 4 or 5 years after my husband was diagnosed, speaking to someone who, and I just remember saying to them, this is not like, we're not better. Everyone said there'd be recovery. I mean, when he was first diagnosed, the psychologist set us so badly up for a fail in saying, take this medication in a couple of years, you'll be fine. Like, why? I don't know why they said that, but we were 4 or 5 years down the line, and I was like, I just don't know what to do. Like, we're still all over the place. And he was like, just hold the line. You're a few more years off. I know that feels like forever, but hold the line. And I do agree. It has taken us that sort of 6, 7, 8 years to be in a place where I'm not jumpy the whole time. I'm not, okay, what could happen here when we get in the car and, you know, the kids are kicking off in the back seat, and I'm like, we're better. We know what we're doing. We know how to make those spaces and places work. And some of that's, you know, kids getting older, and we can have conversations, and some of that we know better what we're doing.
Yeah, those tools just keep earning their way every time.
Keep using the tools.
Yeah, and keep going through.
And we use them as a whole family now.
Yeah.
Like I hear my kids using them with their friends. So like I'll say to, you know, the youngest one, 0 to 10, how are you doing? Give me a number. And, you know, I'll hear like one of the kids do it with one of their friends. How are you doing on a 0 to 10? It becomes part of the language of this is what we do as a family. When we get in a car, how can we get through this in a good space? For us, that means that the teenagers, they're okay to be, you know, headphones on in their own spaces. That's what works. That's what keeps the car journey calm for us, and so that's okay.
Yeah,
that's what works. And you know, I would love to say we have all these deep and meaningful conversations in the car. We don't.
Yeah.
We absolutely don't, because that's not the place for it for us. But that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So with Ripple Pond and like you say, the peer network that you found was basically you couldn't put a price on that. That changed, I think, from the way you kind of explained it, almost changed the game for you completely, and to realise, okay, I'm not alone. I've got people. I've got a village that can help me through this. How does that work within Ripple Pond? Is it like a forum thing, or is there like sort of calls that happen? How do you guys sort of communicate through that, on what kind of basis?
Yeah, so the Ripple Pond is sort of developing all the time. So, you know, the Ripple Pond I joined however many years ago, and now there's lots of different things that would take place now. But for today, if someone wants to kind of get that support, and again, you know, it's not just for people who've got a loved one who've got PTSD. It's, you know, it's for anyone who's struggling to navigate trauma, or adjusting into civil history, or maybe there's physical injuries or blast injuries, or any of that kind of shenanigans. And it doesn't have to be something that's been diagnosed. It can just be, actually, do you know what, my loved one was in the military, and they just don't seem to be themselves at the moment, and that's having an impact on us. So it's any of that stuff. But if someone went onto our website and said, hey, could I get some support, what happens is we would book a telephone conversation. So it's all about listening to your story, because I think that was the thing that blew my mind, was that someone wasn't just like, tell us more about your husband. They were like, no, tell me about you. And that was really empowering, because I felt so disempowered.
Yeah.
So it's having that conversation, which is about you. Okay, that's happening with your loved one. What's that look like for you? How are you navigating that? And so we book that in, and we'll take up to an hour to have that conversation. If it needs to be longer, we'll book a part 2, because I reckon everyone after an hour of talking is probably a bit done, so we'd rather book a part 2. Yeah. But yeah, it's all about that. And then, you know, if someone does want the support of the Ripple Pond, and that's not for everyone, some people go, actually, do you know what, today I needed was counselling, and that one-to-one counselling space, that's not something that we do at the Ripple Pond, but we know places that do, so we'll make sure we give people all the information they need so that they're empowered, because that's another thing. You don't want life just, you feel like life is just happening to you.
Yeah.
And to be able to say, actually, I've got agency, I've got choice, I've got options. That's hugely empowering. So, but if someone did then decide that they wanted to be a member of the Ripple Pond, we have all sorts of different things. So we have WhatsApp peer support groups. So we have some area ones regionally across the UK, but then we also have some interest-based ones, which are sort of a new thing that we're really finding really interesting. So we've got like a gardening group, we've got a book club, we've got a craft group. I'm determined one day to get a traitors group in there for the next series of traitors. I'm desperate for it. But yeah, we're like whatever it is that people are interested in, because we recognise that actually finding things that bring you joy is really important too, and so having a community that get what's going on and can encourage you to do that is so good. So there's those. We do online meetups, so come along, get together. We'll do some that we'll talk around something, and then other ones that are just, you know, if you're new, come along, we'd love to meet you. And then we do things like wellbeing workshops. So those have been really good fun. They're just like these engaging spaces where you talk about things like, our next one's on navigating sleep, which I think is going to be brilliant. I need that. But we've done things like confidence. We've done things like stress. We've done things like healthy routines and habits. And that was one of my favourite ones. Just how do we make micro adjustments that mean that we can have some healthy mini moments in there? So we do all those kind of things. We'll do one every month or so. And then we've also been just launched this art mindful studio. So it's basically these art spaces where you can just be creative, no skills or talent needed, but just come along and we're going to do something creative and we're going to do some journaling. And they are just beautiful spaces to just focus on you. So we have all of those kind of things. We're just trying to kind of, we also have like information talks. So we've got a bank of information talks that we've already recorded, and we're always kind of trying to grab other experts in the field. So things like, you know, what is PTSD, managing secondary trauma. So, you know, understanding that living with someone with PTSD, actually that can be quite traumatic, and vicarious trauma is a thing. And how do we understand that in ourselves? So things like that. We'll do things like recording people's stories in kind of spaces similar to this. So we do all that, but we try and record it so that people can watch it in their own time. And then we are sort of trying to go into kind of expert workshops. So we've got one coming up with looking at kind of chronic trauma and how we live with that. And we've got an ex-GP that's going to come in and talk to us and help us understand that as a family, but also help us communicate that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the things, is it's one thing knowing what's going on, it's another thing beginning to get the language for that. And then the other thing that we've been really working on, so we've got a project running at the minute, we're sort of about halfway through it, is really looking at understanding the impact as a family unit. So beginning to kind of, how do we talk about what PTSD is or what injury is to children, because whether, you know, many of our members, they have young children in their mix, and so we're looking at some things around key stage 1, 2 and 3. How do we talk about what's going on and helping families have conversations? And that's a really important thing. So how do we talk about, I don't feel like myself today? How do we give people language? So we're doing a whole massive piece of work at the minute, which is really exciting actually, to look at how can we hold those conversations as a family and have a strong family unit. So we're going to be doing workshops, we're going to have handouts and all these and videos and all sorts of different resources that are going to be a really helpful thing. And then we just encourage like positivity. So I think yesterday we launched the sunflower growing competition.
Yeah.
We're going to grow sunflowers together, see who's going to get the tallest one. We're going to send out packs of sunflower seeds for those that want to take part. We're going to do that together as a family, because we recognise that as a community, being outside is positive, it's good for us, and we can do positive things together. Because that's it, isn't it? It's like learning that you can't always control what life throws at you. Life's not kind, life's not equal. Like there's some people just seem to get a massive load of
Yeah.
rubbish thrown at them and all in one go. But in the midst of it, you can be having a horrendous time, but you can do little mini things that are positive, and it's just trying to help people hold on to hope and hold on to finding their normal in what feels really abnormal.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
There's so much good stuff that you do, and I think, like you say, it's doing those things that are fun, and you can have really, really great community and relationships within that community and feel seen and feel,
Yeah.
you've got a community that has an understanding and a language, but also it's little things as well, like someone can just look at you some days and go, what's up, what's going on, because they've seen that look on themselves in the mirror probably 3 years prior to that, so they know instantly, whereas your normal friends, your normal family probably won't even register on them. But what you find with people going through those situations, they can instantly sense something, and you don't necessarily have to say anything, and that person is there to be, yeah, I get it, completely get it.
Yeah.
And just that in itself, to be seen as a partner or as a family member, is so critical to helping you as a collective get through, because there is loads of support, for the veteran side, but there's very few groups like yourself that is a collective support network, because the reality is the person that will probably notice the difference first is the partner, and then slowly the person themselves will start to realize there's something wrong, but the partner will instantly know that's out of character. What's going on here?
Yeah. And just even being able to say that kind of, even if it is that 0 to 10 of, are you okay? Are you not okay? Like that just creates so much space for
Yeah,
conversation of like, oh, am I not coming across okay?
yeah,
And you're like, no.
yeah,
You seem a little bit irritable here, or,
yeah,
can I reflect to you that wasn't the most kind response you gave?
yeah,
But, those moments are just so helpful. And that's what the family sees, where you can go to an appointment once a week,
yeah,
and that's great and that is helpful. But if you can combine that with a family, friends, and we have, we'll support not just spouses and partners, but we'll support, adult children, and we'll support parents. We've got an amazing parents group that exist on WhatsApp that are brilliant. That their adult children are struggling, and they just support each other, and they've got all sorts of brilliant little tips and tricks to help. So like one set of parents, they've got a game of the day, that one app or something that they use, and they all know that as a family unit they play that game that day, and that is what tells them that they are all okay. And if they don't play that game, they know they're not okay.
yeah,
And it's just like little things like this that just mean that it's not an hour a week that someone's getting of support. It's much more than that, because we're coming together to be supportive.
yeah, yeah. Making sure everyone is okay through that process.
Everyone, right?
You know, your village is my village, is our village, and all
Yes.
together we can get through it. But don't feel alone in that, because there are people like yourselves that are creating those villages to help get you through, and get you to a point where you have tools, you can use your tools, and you know what, if it's a new situation, you've got a group of people you can go to and go, anyone got a tool for this, can I borrow it, like I need something to help me through this, because it always has a way of popping up and surprising you in some very strange circumstances.
And it's not a competition, right? None of us are in competition for who's in the worst
Yeah,
situation. And I think sometimes people go, "Oh, my life's not, it's not too bad." That's okay. If you want a village, come find a village. You don't have to. We're not grading it
yeah,
on, you know, how bad it is or not. We've gone through times when it's been terrible, but we've also gone through times when actually we're actually it's okay. And actually, it's really reassuring to have people in those moments when things are really, really difficult to say, actually, do you know what, we've been there, and when actually right now we're okay. But equally, like, that support is one of the things we say when someone has a conversation and they want to become a member, is like, the most important thing, we have a code of conduct that we ask everyone to sign. The basis of it is, you know, we're kind, we're confidential, and we're judgment free.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not going to judge your situation, you're not going to judge my situation. If, of course, if there's a risk, or if there is, you know, concern for someone's safety, the Ripple Pond instantly step in. So like on a peer support group, like, we do read all the messages, and if we see anything that we're concerned about, we will step in. But that we're judgment free.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not judging you for having a hard day when my day may be quote unquote harder or not. You know, there isn't a scale that we're working on. If you're struggling, there's community, and don't struggle alone.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like you said before, it might be something just like that they're struggling with the transition coming out, and they start, well, you know, I'm not bad enough. I'm not bad enough for that kind of support. But the reality is, if you leave it, you might become too bad for it and not caught it early enough, you know, and reach out at those points when, you know what, this isn't as easy as we thought it was going to be, and you know what, we might need some help. And that might be all you need at that point. And you know what, that might be the thing that helps you crack on and be absolutely great. But it's also then you've got your safety net there, that if things do start to go further south, you've got that village to go to be
Yeah.
like,
And you can access it however you want to. If you don't want your phone buzzing with WhatsApp messages, that's okay. Like, you can, we email all the events and stuff. So if you just want to come to the wellbeing workshops, then just come to that. That's absolutely fine. It's as much or as little. Some people love the WhatsApp groups. Some people go through seasons where they love the WhatsApp groups, and then other seasons where actually the pinging is difficult. So we're like, put it on mute or archive it. Like, it's absolutely fine to do that. Like, you don't have to respond to everything that comes in. Like, this is to be helpful to you in whichever way that is. Some people respond to messages, some people just read them, and that's all that they need. Like, there's also like a Facebook group. You can kind of measure it how you need and what works for you, and I think that's really important, that you can just take ownership for what you need.
yeah, and get that sort of almost that level of comfort that you require from it. Like I say, just knowing
Yeah.
the Facebook group's there and you're part of it, and you can think, well, it's there if I need it, but at least I know where it is, and know
Yeah.
it's there. And like I said, that might be all you need, just to have that comfort thought of, well, I know I can reach out if I need to, but you,
Or you can phone the office
yeah,
and just kind of, like, phone us and just say, do you know what, today's a terrible day. Is anyone around to have a conversation? Absolutely. We'll always kind of drop what we're doing to, you know, and if we can't do it today, we'll book it in,
yeah,
you know, to have that kind of conversation. Because recognize, like, sometimes you just need someone else just to
yeah.
listen.
Sometimes you just need a vent in a language that you're understood in. And I think that's the common thread that I'm finding talking to a lot of people is, whether it be medical or wherever it may be on sort of this side of the fence, the biggest barrier is the language and the lack of understanding of the circumstance, especially when going to sort of down sort of the NHS medical route. You know, you might be that first veteran that doctor's ever seen. So talking in, you know, down sort of, you know, wars and blasts and things like that, it's just there's no language for them to help you with. So having those kind of spaces where you can phone up and go, I've had the worst day, and not have
Yeah.
to explain your language to someone is one less battle that day, that you can just have a genuine conversation with someone who actually understands you. You don't have to explain yourself or what you're trying to explain or anything. It's just they're just like, yep, get it, completely get it.
Yeah.
Because that in itself is a barrier, I think, for a lot of people, is I'm just going to have to explain myself. to someone who just doesn't
Yeah,
get it.
and sometimes people don't want that traditional pathway of help. They
Yeah,
don't want the NHS. They, like that's just too difficult to
yeah,
access. They might be self-medicating with like alcohol or drugs, and we'll see that quite often. That actually, to access that kind of NHS is just not for them. They can't. They're not in that space that they can do that right now. We'll support a family member anyway. Like they don't have to be kind of getting the right help or not the right help. They just need to say, hey, could you support me? That's all you need to do. And I think that's really important because it isn't black and white. It's not always super clear or easy.
it's not. It's a real yeah. You're almost stood in the middle of a cornfield sometimes, and it's up over your head. Oh, how do I get out of here?
Yes.
Well, they tried that way, and I could try that way, but it's
My husband's tried lots of different
yeah,
things. I mean, some of them have been good, some of them not.
yeah.
Some of them I absolutely would not recommend.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think as well, it gets to the point where it's like, you know what, I'll try it. Why not? You never know. Why not?
yeah,
I've had sort of situations where I'm like, you know what, if you told me to lick a rat right now, I'd try it. Why not? Let's give it a go. We've tried everything else at this point, and I think there is a little bit of that as well as is it does feel, I think, slightly endless because you pin your hopes on every kind of treatment in the hope that this is the one that fits. And
yeah,
when it doesn't, then there's a whole new level of sort of kind of woe and almost
yeah.
despair and defeated. And then you've got to pick yourself back up again. Right, let's try something else and let's try something else and try something else. Where again that community support is so crucial because sometimes picking yourself up is too hard and you might need that network to go, no, we can do this. We've got other things to try, and you are doing well with the lot you've been given. We're just trying to make it that little bit better. It doesn't mean to say what you're doing now is failing. It's just we're just trying to make it a little bit better, and we'll
So you've not found the right thing quite yet, but there's so many more options these days than there were like even 10, 15 years ago. There's so many more places out there where you can get support in different ways and different avenues. If, that kind of phoning your doctor feels a step too far, there's other places you can go. You don't have to do that. You can find some great places that just they'll help you through a hobby or through an interest or through something. There's help there.
yeah, definitely. And what I've found as well with the help that's out there, like yourselves, it's people that have been touched directly in some way by the scenario that they're trying to put back into. And what I
Yeah.
found is, reaching out to those communities, you are going to find that conversation and that understanding because the people sat on the other side of the phone are usually the people that have also gone through it. That they've not just found themselves there by accident, because they volunteered randomly. That kind of thing is quite rare. It's usually because someone
Yeah.
themselves has been impacted or they've known someone to be impacted and they've had to live it in real time, in real life. And so I think groups like yourselves are so worth reaching out to because you are going to find that phone call that's just, oh, someone gets it. Someone finally gets it. And I thought I was like the only person on this planet until I picked up the phone.
Yeah.
And, the relief you can gain just from that one phone call. Like you said, it was just, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this. And, you 8 years, 10 years on from that, still, investing back and helping the next sort of generation of people to sort of find their way through that as well, which
Yeah.
which is amazing. And I think what you guys do are just absolutely incredible and is what's needed most
Mm.
definitely. That holistic whole support of the family as well as the individual themselves that needs the
Yeah.
attention for their well-being as well. So, yeah, I think absolutely incredible work, and I will thoroughly recommend people reach out to you if they are struggling, and not to suffer alone.
Even if they're not sure, like, oh, I don't want to be a member, just reach out anyway, and we'll have a conversation, because it might be that we can, in that conversation, point you to some places that maybe feel a little bit more comfortable today.
Yeah.
That's okay. We consider that as much of a success as anything else. If we're not the right place, we'd love to see if we together can find the right thing for you, so that you've got something.
And you guys are in that space and you see these calls and have these conversations, so who better to signpost you than someone that's living and breathing this every day when it's very new to the
Yeah.
person at the other end of the phone.
Yeah.
And in that you could find the solution, or something that can help you find the best solution for you as well.
Yeah. And just to say, if there's, veterans watching this and like, I get it's difficult to say that your family might be struggling with where it's at. There's no judgment on anyone else. Like, it is what it is. So please don't feel like, we bash anyone for being in the place they are. We absolutely don't. It's horrendous for you. It's just about creating space where your loved ones can thrive too, and we can find places to bring joy, maybe, and hopefully make things feel a little lighter. We're not about making it heavier, we're about making things feel a little lighter.
Thank you, Sarah. You've been
Pleasure.
amazing to talk to. And I wish you guys all the best, and hopefully I'll catch up with you again at some point to see what you guys have been up to this year. Great organisation, and yeah, thoroughly recommend.
Please do put our URL in.
I'll put
in
that
the
in
things
for the guys so they can find you.
That's it.
And yeah, so whenever they listen to this, they can come and find you guys and get the help they need.
Fantastic.
That's fab. Thank you very much, Sarah.